felt haunted. The Earth Dragon's corpse still lay motionless across the temple floor like a collapsed mountain. Blue fire flickered endlessly along ancient pillars. Dust drifted silently through the cold air, and somewhere deep below the labyrinth, the violent dragon was still alive. Jayan slowly sat beside Adelia while she recovered from the mandrake's effects. Her breathing had stabilized. Most of her wounds had closed, but the sight of her broken body moments earlier continued replaying inside his mind. Too slow. He had been far too slow. If the auto-parry had failed, if the violent dragon had attacked once more, everything would have ended underground. Jayan lowered his gaze toward his trembling hands. Until now, he had relied heavily on knowledge. Routes, items, NPC behavior, hidden quests. Everything he knew from the game had allowed him to survive impossible situations. But today proved something terrifying. Knowledge alone was no longer enough, because the world itself had begun changing. And worse, it was changing because of him. The realization settled heavily inside his chest. Every action he took distorted the original flow. Every survival created new consequences. The future was no longer stable, and eventually there would come a moment when he would know nothing at all. The original purpose of this entire expedition. The Earth Dragon's heart, one of the greatest early game treasures in Lost Elder. A relic capable of drastically strengthening physical abilities. In the game, obtaining it had been simple. Defeat boss, receive reward, continue progression. Reality was very different. Standing before the Earth Dragon's corpse now, Jayan felt genuinely overwhelmed. The creature was enormous. Its scales alone were thicker than armor plating. Its flesh resembled stone more than living tissue. And unlike the game, there was no convenient loot window waiting to appear. Jayan sighed deeply. Right, of course. This world demanded real effort, real blood, real exhaustion, real consequences. He picked up the feather blade and began climbing across the dragon's corpse. The smell was unbearable. Heavy metallic blood filled the chamber. Blackened scales scraped against the stone beneath his feet. Finding the exact location of the heart alone took nearly an hour. And once he finally found it, a new problem appeared immediately. He could not pierce the scales. Jayan swung the feather blade repeatedly. Clang. The blade sparked uselessly against the dragon hide. Nothing happened. Minutes passed, then more. Sweat soaked his clothing. His breathing grew heavier. His arms trembled from exhaustion. Still no progress. Finally, frustration exploded from him. Damn it! The feather blade clattered across the stone floor as Jayan collapsed beside the corpse. For several moments, he simply lay there staring upward into darkness. Exhausted, not physically alone. Mentally, the game had never shown this part. Never the labor, never the helplessness, never the reality of dragging strength from the corpse of a godlike creature using weak human hands. And yet, something unexpected happened. A soft notification appeared before his eyes. Strength slightly increased. Stamina slightly increased. Jayan blinked. Then another notification appeared. Level increased. Silence followed. Then slowly, Jayan laughed. Not loudly, just a tired, disbelieving laugh. Even failure produced growth here. Even struggle itself had meaning. That realization felt strangely comforting. Chapter 14. Adelia's awakening. Several hours later, Adelia finally opened her eyes fully. The first thing she saw was Jayan still sitting beside the Earth Dragon's corpse, covered in blood, sweat-soaked, exhausted. For the first time since meeting him, he looked human, not mysterious, not untouchable, just tired. Adelia slowly sat upright. The effects of the mandrake still lingered throughout her body. Power flowed differently now, sharper, cleaner, stronger. The near-fatal battle with the violent dragon combined with the mandrake's energy had forced her growth forward dramatically, but her attention remained fixed on Jayan, specifically on the expression hidden behind his silence. Sir Jayan. Jayan looked toward her quietly. Adelia hesitated briefly before speaking. You were afraid. The chamber became silent again. Jayan did not answer immediately, because there was no point denying it. Eventually, he nodded once. Yes. Adelia stared at him in surprise. Until now, she had unconsciously viewed Jayan almost like an existence beyond understanding. Someone who always knew the answer. Someone who controlled every situation. But now, she realized something important. Jayan was not fearless. He was simply moving forward despite fear. That realization changed something inside her. Respect remained, but now it carried weight, reality, and perhaps the first traces of genuine trust. Chapter 15. The distorted future. The return journey through the labyrinth felt entirely different from the descent. The tunnels remained the same. Dark, cold, endless. Yet now everything felt uncertain. Every distant sound made Jayan pause slightly. Every shadow drew suspicion, because for the first time since arriving in this world, he no longer trusted the scenario completely. The violent dragon should not have appeared. The Earth Dragon should not have died. And hidden messages should never have emerged. Something deeper was changing beneath the surface of the world. The Donkey Elder quietly guided them upward forward while pretending not to notice the tension surrounding Jaein. Even the donkey remained unusually calm, as though instinctively understanding that something terrible had shifted underground. Eventually, faint traces of warmer air reached them. The upper layers were close. Civilization, like people. Yet Jaein felt no relief, because another problem already awaited above ground. The Brickwood family. By now, the investigation surrounding the heavenly dragon bird would already be spreading through Verdas, and his name, a name that should have remained hidden far longer, was beginning to move through powerful circles. Jaein slowly closed his eyes for a moment. Everything was accelerating, far too quickly. Originally, he intended to grow carefully, quietly, methodically, but now the world itself was forcing escalation. Faster enemies, faster conflicts, faster consequences. The future had begun collapsing inward, and somewhere ahead, the duel with the violent dragon waited inevitably in the darkness. Jaein opened his eyes again, then quietly continued walking toward the surface, toward a future that no longer belonged to the game he once mastered. It should not have happened. In the original timeline, the old spice merchant from the Eastern District survived for years, a meaningless side character, someone irrelevant to the larger scenario. And yet, Jaein arrived too late to save him from a random monster attack near the lower market tunnels. The old man's body lay motionless beneath shattered wooden stalls while rainwater slowly mixed with blood across the stone streets. Jaein stood frozen, because this was not supposed to happen. The system had not warned him. No hidden message appeared. No event trigger activated. Nothing. For several long moments, he simply stared silently at the corpse. Then finally, fear settled quietly into his chest. Not fear of monsters, fear of uncertainty. Until now, even with distortions, Jaein still subconsciously relied on the assumption that major future structures remained intact. But this proved something terrifying. Even small events had started diverging completely, meaning the future no longer belonged to him. Certain underground routes no longer existed. Even system notifications became inconsistent, sometimes delayed, sometimes incomplete. Once, an enemy-level window appeared several seconds late during combat. Adelia nearly died because of it. The realization shook Jaein deeply. His greatest advantage was collapsing piece by piece, and the worst part, he no longer knew how much remained reliable. Jaein sat silently inside the in-room while maps, notes, and fragmented memories covered the table before him. Adelia quietly watched him from nearby. For the first time since meeting him, he looked lost, not weak, lost. His mind moved constantly now. Endless calculations, possibilities, corrections, but increasingly, nothing aligned perfectly anymore. Then suddenly, Adelia spoke quietly. "You're afraid of forgetting." Jaein's hand stopped moving. Silence followed, because she was right. Not only was the world changing, his own memories were becoming unstable. The more reality diverged, the harder it became to separate original events, altered events, and things that may never have existed at all. The lower tunnels of Labyrinth Village felt different now. Wrong. Sometimes distant footsteps echoed despite empty corridors. Sometimes torchlight flickered against walls where no flames existed. And occasionally, Jaein glimpsed shadows moving through tunnels that should not physically connect. The abyss itself was changing. He eventually reached one of the old hidden routes from the original game, or rather, the place where it should have been. Instead, he found only solid stone. No entrance, no passage, nothing. Jaein stared silently, then slowly stepped backward, because he remembered this route perfectly. Perfectly. He had used it dozens of times during previous playthroughs. Yet now reality itself denied its existence. A soft system notification appeared. Past synchronization failed. Jaein's breathing became slightly uneven. The system was no longer simply malfunctioning. It was actively acknowledging contradiction. Chapter 38, Ripley Syndrome. The dreams worsened after that. Sometimes Jaein woke believing he was still inside the game. Other times, he briefly forgot whether Adelia had originally been a real person. The line separating memory and reality continued weakening, and deep inside, Jaein began fearing himself, because he noticed something disturbing. He manipulated people too easily now, lied too naturally, calculated too instinctively. Even emotions increasingly became variables inside his mind. Adelia noticed it too. One evening, while walking through the quieter districts of Verdas, she suddenly asked, "Do you still see people as real?" Jaein stopped walking immediately. The question struck harder than expected. For several moments, he said nothing, because the truth frightened him. When he first arrived in this world, everyone resembled NPCs. Predictable systems, quest objects, useful allies. But now, people bled, suffered, changed unexpectedly. And yet, part of him still unconsciously categorized them through game logic. Useful, dangerous, important, disposable. That realization disgusted him slightly. Adelia quietly watched his expression, then softly added, "You hesitate longer now before answering emotional questions." Silence. Jaein slowly looked away, because she was right again. Chapter Chapter 39, The False Prophecy, The Sacred Investigation reached a breaking point 1 week later. Middle Temple officially released a prophecy fragment recovered from ancient archives. The announcement spread across the continent almost immediately. The one who distorts the cycle shall either save the world or destroy its final balance. Fear erupted instantly. Religious factions interpreted the prophecy differently. Some viewed the distorter as salvation. Others called it heresy. And inevitably, attention turned toward Jayan. Not publicly yet, but enough whispers had already formed. The saint candidate confronted him directly that night. "You're connected to the prophecy." Jayan remained silent. That wasn't a question. Moonlight illuminated the balcony, while distant city bells echoed softly below. The saint candidate studied him carefully. "Tell me honestly." Her voice lowered. "Did you come from outside the cycle?" Jayan's heartbeat slowed. For several seconds, neither moved. Then finally, very quietly, he answered, "I don't know anymore." And for the first time since arriving in this world, that answer was completely honest. After days spent beneath the earth, the open sky above Verdes looked painfully bright. Adelia narrowed her eyes slightly while emerging from the final tunnel entrance. The donkey elder quietly pulled his donkey forward without speaking. Jayan stopped for a brief moment beneath the sunlight. People moved normally through the streets. Merchants shouted. Carriages rolled across stone roads. Everything looked ordinary, and yet Jayan understood the truth. The world had already changed. No one else realized it yet, but the future he remembered was collapsing piece by piece beneath invisible pressure. The Earth Dragon was dead. The violent dragon had moved early. Causality itself had shifted, and now the consequences were waiting above ground. Jayan slowly adjusted the hood covering his face. "We separate here," he told the donkey elder quietly. The old man immediately nodded. He still looked terrified, not because of the debt anymore, but because he instinctively sensed something dangerous surrounding Jayan himself. The old guide hesitated briefly before speaking. "Young master." Jayan glanced sideways. The donkey elder lowered his voice. "The deeper parts of the labyrinth have become restless lately." Jayan's eyes narrowed slightly. "Restless?" "The tunnels move differently now." The old man swallowed dryly. "As if something beneath the abyss has awakened." Silence followed. Jayan said nothing more, but internally, unease spread slowly through his thoughts. Something beneath the abyss. Another deviation. Another unknown variable. The donkey elder quietly bowed once before disappearing into the crowded streets with his donkey. Adelia watched him leave before finally speaking. "Sir Jayan, what is it? What exactly are we fighting against?" Jayan did not answer immediately, because for the first time since arriving in this world, he genuinely did not know. Tenser. Whispers moved through taverns and merchant halls alike. The heavenly dragon bird. Everyone was talking about it. A dragon-class monster corpse appearing near Verdes had already become one of the largest rumors in recent memory. And inevitably, Jayan's name had begun spreading alongside it. Not openly, not publicly, but among certain circles, merchants, nobles, sacred families, people had started asking questions. Who discovered the corpse? Who killed the creature? Why was the timing strange? Jayan quietly observed the city while walking beside Adelia. Several times, he noticed unfamiliar eyes following them briefly through crowds. Observers, spies. The Brickwood family had already started moving. Jayan understood that much immediately. "We need to avoid the main districts for now," he muttered. Adelia looked slightly confused. "Are we being hunted?" "Not yet." Jayan's gaze hardened. "But people have begun paying attention, and attention was dangerous, especially now. Originally, he planned to remain invisible while steadily growing stronger. But the scenario distortions were accelerating everything around him. Too many people were noticing him too early. That was bad. Very bad. Chapter 18, The Merchant Under Pressure. Dirtimal looked exhausted. Dark circles hung beneath the merchant's eyes while stacks of documents covered his office desk chaotically. The moment Jayan entered the room, Dirtimal immediately stood up. "You're alive." Jayan frowned slightly. "That's a strange greeting." Dirtimal forced out a bitter laugh. "You have no idea what's happening right now." He quickly shut the office door before lowering his voice. "The Brickwood family has started pressuring every guild connected to the Heavenly Dragon Bird incident." As expected, Jayan remained calm externally, but internally his thoughts accelerated rapidly. The situation was progressing faster than anticipated. Dirtimal continued speaking. "They claim someone committed sacrilege by hiding information connected to a sword seeker." Adelia's expression hardened immediately. Sacrilege accusations involving sacred authority were no small matter. Entire guilds could collapse from such charges. Dirtimal lowered himself heavily into his chair. "They're searching for you." Silence filled the office. Jayan slowly closed his eyes. Everything truly was escalating now. The violent dragon, the distorted causality, the sacred investigation, the Brickwood family, all of it was converging far earlier than it should have. Eventually, Dirtimal looked at him carefully. "Tell me honestly." His voice became quieter. "Who exactly are you?" Jaehyun opened his eyes again. For a brief moment, the room became completely silent. Then he answered calmly, "A survivor." Dirtimal stared at him in confusion, but Jaehyun said nothing further, because that answer was the closest thing to truth he could currently give. His body still ached from the labyrinth. His arms remained sore from trying to carve into the Earth Dragon's corpse, but something inside him had changed more significantly than any physical wound. The illusion of control was gone. Before, he believed knowledge alone could guide him safely through this world. Now he understood the truth. Knowledge only delayed danger. It did not remove it. Jaehyun slowly opened his status window. His stats had increased. His level had risen. His foundation had begun stabilizing. But compared to the monsters already moving across the continent, it was nowhere near enough. The violent dragon alone had proven that. Jaehyun closed the status screen quietly. Then he looked toward the distant horizon beyond Verdes. The future was no longer fixed, meaning new possibilities existed. Dangerous possibilities, unpredictable possibilities, but also opportunities that never existed inside the original game. Slowly, a faint smile appeared on Jaehyun's face. Fear remained, uncertainty remained, but alongside them, something else had appeared. Excitement, because for the first time, this world no longer belonged to the game, and that meant even fate itself could potentially be overturned. ACT 6, The Sacred Investigation, Chapter 20. Eyes upon the city. Verdes no longer felt welcoming. The city had not physically changed. The streets remained crowded. Merchants still shouted from market stalls. Carriages still rolled through polished avenues beneath the protection of the barrier. And yet, something invisible had shifted. Jaehyun could feel it everywhere. People were watching him now. Not openly, not directly, but enough. A merchant lingering too long near the inn entrance. A cloaked figure standing motionless across the street. Sacred knights quietly questioning guild workers. The city was beginning to tighten around him. Jaehyun walked calmly through the crowded district while keeping his hood lowered. Adelia remained beside him in silence. Even she could sense the atmosphere growing heavier. Finally, she spoke quietly. "The sacred families are moving." Yes. Jaehyun's voice remained calm, but internally his thoughts moved rapidly. The timing was bad. Far too bad. Originally, the heavenly dragon bird incident should have remained hidden much longer. At worst, it would attract minor attention from merchant factions. Not this. Not a full sacred investigation, and certainly not this early. The problem was obvious. The violent dragon, a sword master appearing publicly, changed everything. Once sacred organizations realized a sword seeker had moved near Verdes, they would investigate every abnormality connected to the region, which meant eventually they would arrive at him. Jaehyun quietly clenched his fist beneath his sleeve. His growth was still incomplete. He was not ready for direct confrontation with sacred powers yet. Their appearance alone silenced entire streets. White robes embroidered with silver scripture. Sacred insignias glowing faintly beneath sunlight. Dozens of mounted temple knights escorting them through Verdes. Middle Temple, one of the central powers governing the continent's sacred authority. Ordinary citizens lowered their heads immediately as the procession passed. Fear, respect, faith, all mixed together. Jaehyun observed them quietly from the second floor of a crowded tavern. Then his eyes narrowed slightly. Among the envoys walked a woman carrying no weapon. Young, calm, beautiful, but the pressure surrounding her felt unnatural. Saint Candidate. Jaehyun recognized it immediately. The sacred organizations never sent ordinary investigators when sword masters were involved. This meant the situation was already being treated seriously. Adelia studied the procession carefully. They moved faster than expected. Yes. Jaehyun's expression darkened slightly. Too fast. Again. Everything was accelerating, as if invisible hands were pushing events forward before they should occur. Then suddenly, the Saint Candidate stopped walking. Slowly, she turned her head upward, directly toward the tavern window, toward Jaehyun. Their eyes met briefly across the crowded street, and for a single moment, Jaehyun felt something strange. Not hostility. Recognition. The woman stared silently before continuing forward with the procession. Adelia frowned immediately. Did she notice us? Jaehyun remained silent, because the truth unsettled him. The Saint Candidate should not have recognized him. Not yet. Chapter 22. The Brickwood Trap. That evening, Dirtimal summoned Jaehyun urgently. The Merchant Guild headquarters felt tense the moment Jaehyun arrived. Workers whispered nervously. Guards stood near every entrance. Documents covered tables chaotically. Dirtimal himself looked pale. They've officially begun. Jaehyun sat quietly across from him. The investigation? Dirtimal nodded heavily. The Brickwood family submitted formal accusations to Middle Temple. Adelia's eyes sharpened immediately. What accusations? Dirtimal hesitated briefly, then answered quietly. Sacrilege. Silence filled the room. Even among nobles, sacrilege accusations were terrifying. Sacred Sacred law operated above ordinary politics. Once the temple became involved, entire families could disappear overnight. Dirdamal wiped sweat from his forehead. They claimed someone concealed information regarding a sword seeker and illegally profited from a divine-class monster corpse. Jayan leaned back slowly. As expected, Edmund Brickwood had chosen the most aggressive route possible. Not merely political pressure, total destruction. Dirdamal lowered his voice further. They also requested custody of you. Adelia's hand immediately moved toward her sword, but Jayan raised a hand calmly. No sudden moves. Adelia frowned. They intend to arrest you. Yes. Jayan's expression remained unreadable. And that means they're desperate. The room fell silent again, because only desperate people escalated situations this recklessly, which meant something important. The Brickwood family was afraid, and fear made people predictable. Chapter 23. The Saint Candidate night covered Verdas in silence. Jayan stood alone on the inn balcony overlooking the distant city lights. His thoughts remained restless. The Saint Candidate, the investigation, the accelerating timeline, too many variables. Then, a quiet voice spoke behind him. You noticed me earlier. Jayan turned instantly. The Saint Candidate stood silently at the balcony entrance. No guards, no knights, just her. Moonlight illuminated silver markings embroidered along her white robes. Adelia immediately stepped forward protectively from inside the room, but the woman calmly raised a hand. I came alone. Jayan studied her carefully. This was dangerous, very dangerous. Sacred candidates were not ordinary humans. They possessed heightened perception granted through divine authority, and unlike most people, they could sometimes sense abnormalities directly. The Saint Candidate tilted her head slightly while observing Jayan. You feel strange. Jayan remained expressionless. That sounds rude. Unexpectedly, the woman smiled faintly. No, her eyes sharpened slightly. You feel disconnected. A cold sensation passed through Jayan's chest. For the first time since arriving in this world, someone had sensed it. Not his identity, not his secrets, but the distortion surrounding him. The Saint Candidate continued quietly. When I looked at you earlier, it felt as though causality itself shifted unnaturally. Silence. Even Adelia stiffened slightly upon hearing those words. Jayan's thoughts accelerated instantly. This woman was dangerous far beyond expectations. Then the Saint Candidate suddenly asked, who exactly are you? The city lights flickered quietly behind them. Jayan looked at her silently for several long seconds, then finally answered, someone trying to stop the end. For the first time, the Saint Candidate's calm expression cracked slightly. Chapter 24. Fractures. The meeting ended without violence. But after the Saint Candidate departed, silence lingered heavily throughout the room. Adelia looked deeply unsettled, not because of hostility, because of what the woman sensed. Causality, distortion. Jayan slowly sat beside the window while organizing his thoughts. The situation had grown worse again. Originally, sacred organizations should not have noticed him until far later. But now, a Saint Candidate herself had personally confirmed something abnormal surrounding him. And if she reported that information to Middle Temple, everything would accelerate further. Adelia finally spoke quietly. Can sacred authority truly sense something like that? Yes. Jayan's voice remained calm, but only certain individuals. The problem was obvious. The more Jayan altered the world, the more visible the distortions became. Eventually, someone would begin connecting the anomalies together. The Earth Dragon, the Violent Dragon, the Heavenly Dragon Bird, the altered timelines, and once enough intelligent people noticed the pattern, Jayan himself would become the center of suspicion. A dangerous silence settled over the room. Then suddenly, ding, a familiar system message appeared before Jayan's eyes. Warning, distortion threshold increasing. Jayan froze instantly. That message had never appeared before. Not once in the original game. Another notification followed immediately. Hidden sequence approaching activation. For several seconds, Jayan simply stared silently at the floating windows. Then slowly, very slowly, he realized the terrifying truth. The world was no longer merely changing. It was reacting to him.